confident that if the Congress could find in these suggestions, which come from members of both parties, a ground for adjustment of legislation on these dominant particulars, and could bring it into immediate action, it would yield not only relief to a sorely distressed people, but would reestablish that confidence which we so sorely need.
To what extent did the false prosperities of the 1920s contribute to the Great Depression? The Great Depression was triggered by the false prosperities of the 1920s. However, they were not the sole causes of the Great Depression. Let me remind you that credit is the lifeblood of business, the lifeblood of prices and jobs. Herbert Hoover.
The 1920s seemed like a time of hope after World War I. People had high hopes for the future because of the illusion of the prosperity. One of the key things that was a huge false prosperity at the time was the overproduction from companies. Overproduction meaning that companies were mass-producing products, putting a ton of money into producing products. For example, cars. The Ford company was producing cars on a massive level. Henry Ford even raised his daily minimum wage to keep top workers to maintain production pace.
The problem with overproduction in the 1920s was simple. Companies were overproducing while people were overconsuming, despite not having any actual money. The population would go out and buy products such as cars or bathtubs using what is called layaway. This made it so that they could say they would pay a set amount of money each month to the company for the product. However, when they weren't able to pay back the companies, it meant that companies lost money and in turn helped trigger the Great Depression because that meant that there were less workers and less money circulating through the economy.
Ultimately, the false prosperities only worsened the Great Depression due to the fact that companies were unable to get the money, so many owed them. This meant that people were laid off and wages were shortened. This made it even more difficult for people to pay money back and have the basic necessities. It is just as important that business keep out of government as that government keep out of business. Herbert Hoover. In the end, the unregulated stock market, lack of attention when handing out loans, and the huge disparity in who owned stocks helped contribute significantly to the Great Depression, especially after the stock market crash.
The stock market seemed like a great way to achieve wealth during the 1920s. However, it did not actually benefit the masses. For example, only 2% of the population in the United States had owned actual stocks at the time. Another problem with this is that the stock market was extremely unregulated, which meant that when the stock market crashed in 1929, the economy was completely toppled over because of the unregulations of the stock market during the 20s.
One of the other problems with the stock market during the 1920s was the stock market was unregulated by the federal government. Stockbrokers could give people loans on stocks that they would want to purchase. The two key problems with this is that they would give people loans who would be unable to pay back the loans, and they would sell them stocks that other people would already own.
The speculation in the stock market, while not a false prosperity, also helped contribute to the Great Depression.
What would happen during the speculation of the stock market is people would assume that stocks were going to go up, so they would go out and buy mass quantities of them. However, they would soon find out that they would actually be going down, so as soon as they would find that out, they would go sell these stocks to other people who would assume that they would be going up as well. This meant that people were out of money because they had invested into a stock that went down instead of up.
So when people realized that their stocks were about to go down, they would sell them all. This caused people to buy stocks that were about to go down, which meant people lost money by investing in stocks that went under.
Overall, the false prosperities were a significantly large contributor to the Great Depression. However, things like overspeculation did also get the ball rolling on the Great Depression.